There are legends of people born with the gift of making music so true it can pierce the veil between life and death, conjuring spirits from the past and the future. In ancient Ireland, they were called Philly. In Choctaw land, they call them firekeepers. And in West Africa, they're called griots. This gift can bring healing to their communities, but it also attracts evil.
The film begins with a title card, Clarksdale, Mississippi, 1932. Clarksdale is historically known as the birthplace of blues. Clarksdale is located in the Mississippi Delta, where black field hands, former slaves, transformed work songs into a very distinct sound. Before it was known as Clarksdale, it was Choctaw land, part of a main trade route known as the Lower Creek Trade Path for natives in the region. Until a colonizer and human trafficker named John Clark came and turned the land into timber mills and established cotton plantations in the area, which became the area's main source of revenue. By the 1860s, the census recorded a population of 1,521 whites to 5,085 enslaved Africans. Clarksdale earned its title of the Golden Buckle of the Cotton Belt. We see on screen a lone figure, shaken, scared. He's emerging from a car, and this car is a very particular car. This car is a C.R. Patterson & Sons Patterson Greenfield automobile. This is the first and only car manufactured by Black Americans. This figure is Samuel "Sammy" Moore. The church belongs to his father, Jedediah Moore, who strongly opposes Sammy's blues playing and pleads with him to drop his guitar, renounce that life, and join the church. We cut to the day before. The sun rises and we find Sammy already in the fields. He works as a sharecropper. The sharecropper system emerged out of the fetid and cruel imagination of the post-Civil War period. Landowners, often former slave-owning plantation owners, in need of workers would rent land to tenants, usually their own former slaves, who now needed jobs and income. They would rent the land at highly inflated prices and take a significant share of their profits. This would keep Black people in a cycle of poverty that was little more than indentured servitude. You have to think about that. Like, you were a slave, you are now emancipated. Your former slave owner, the person who has enslaved your family for generations, has now offered you a job you desperately need because now you need to make money and income for your family. The job is that I will rent this land to you, this land that your family has tended to for generations and generations. I'll rent it to you, and you will sell me back half the profits, still operating from a system where the landowners do nothing and get all of the profits, which is like genius in like an evil way, but also like incredible.
Sensational.
It kept Black people in this cycle of poverty, this cycle that like they would constantly have to pay over and over and over again, pay the land, pay the rent on the land. The landowners would rent them the land. They would also rent them the tools, the seeds that they needed, the housing, all at outrageous cost, which would keep them in a cycle of debt. Then, when they were trying to get out from underneath that debt, the landowners would then take a large share of the profits, any profits that they made from their crops, and then how are you supposed to get out from underneath any of the debt? What's even worse is that sometimes the landowners didn't even pay in money. Sometimes the landowners would pay in script, or they would pay in nickels to be exchanged at the plantation company store. We'll get into that a little bit later on. Here we see the cotton fields, and they stretch out forever, for miles and miles and miles, touching the horizon. And this is all he sees. This is Sammy's vision. All he sees for himself is cotton fields, back-breaking labor with very little reward, being kept in this exploitative system of racism and injustice and exploitation over and over and over again forever. The cotton fields are like purgatory, a land between heaven and hell, where you just have to toil for eternity, and there is no rest, and there is no end. The camera cuts back to a man leaning against the Patterson Greenfield automobile that we saw in the flash forward in the beginning of the movie. This time, actually, it's two men, identical twins, who are leaning up against it. These are Elijah Smokemore and Elias Stackmore, also known as the Smokestack twins. Elias is a major Hebrew prophet in the Bible, and he also goes by the name Elijah. They are World War I veterans who, after serving and returning to Clarksdale, left for Chicago and have now come back. World War I lasted from about 1914 to 1918, and around 370,000 to 380,000 African American men served in World War I. But upon returning, they met with some of the most brutal and violent racism since the post-Civil War period. Having experienced life outside of Jim Crow for the first time ever in their lives, particularly in France, these soldiers came back home with brand new perspectives. They had seen what life was like outside of the Jim Crow racist American system. They had military stipends, and most importantly, they had weapons training. Meanwhile, the Klan saw its highest enrollment during this time period, estimated at 4 to 5 million people in the 1920s. One can only imagine the disappointment and betrayal by Black servicemen who risked their lives for this country only to be thrust back into systemic discrimination. W.E.B. Du Bois writes about this in his essay, Returning Soldiers, in 1919, urging returning Black servicemen to fight for civil rights.
This is the country to which we soldiers of democracy return. This is the fatherland for which we fought. But it is our fatherland. It was right for us to fight. The faults of our country are our faults. Under similar circumstances, we would fight again, but by the God of heaven, we are cowards and jackasses if now that that war is over, we do not marshal every ounce of our brain and brawn to fight a sterner, longer, more unbending battle against the forces of hell in our own land. We return from fighting. We return fighting. Make way for democracy. We saved it in France, and by the great Jehovah, we will save it in the United States of America, or know the reason why.
Elias and Elijah moved to Chicago and began working in crime, one for the Italian mob and the other one for the Irish. They say that they work for Capone, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe that was a lie because it sounds impressive. Maybe it's true. I don't know. With enough money taken from both, they have returned home to Mississippi and plan to open a juke joint in what they think is an old sawmill. When Hogwood, the man who's going to sell the old sawmill to them, arrives, he laughs to them and says, "The Klan doesn't exist no more." While by the 1930s the KKK was on the decline due to the Great Depression, it's undoubtedly untrue that the Klan had vanished, as the Klan still exists to this very day. The Great Depression had hit the Klan very hard because of the fact that it was so economically devastating that people were just focused more on trying to make ends meet than they were trying to murder minorities. The Klan is still America's longest running, most violent, and least prosecuted terrorist group. Still to this day, the Klan's just around, and it's just a terrorist group, and we're just supposed to be worried about, like, I don't know, Antifa. Sammy goes to his father's church, where he knows his prized possession, a guitar, is being held. Jedediah asks Sammy about a Bible verse, 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. This verse is a foreshadowing of what Sammy will go through by the end of the film. Will God provide a way out for Sammy? Will Sammy survive his temptation? When the twins arrive, Jedediah gives one last warning to his son. You keep dancing with the devil, and one day he's going to follow you home. Jedediah is framed in a very similar way as Reddick, the main villain in the movie. It's seen in the beginning when he first pops up on screen, and there's these sort of like smash cuts between Jedediah and Remick, and there's also similar framing with Jedediah in this scene as there are with Remick. He's shot in casted shadow, and he's shot with an intense eye shine to make him look sort of unnatural, drawing parallels between Reddick on one side and his father Jedediah on another side of Sammy, sort of like the devil on one shoulder and the angel on one shoulder, pulling Sammy in two different directions that he doesn't even really want to go. When Sammy and the twins set off between the endless landscape of cotton fields, there is only one road that they're driving down. You can only see one road. It's like, this is the road to destiny. There's no other options. Sammy is headed out to his fate, and there is no turning back now. The twins talk about Chicago and how it's no different from home, it's just Mississippi with tall buildings instead of plantations, emphasizing that all-consuming presence of racism in America. During the Great Migration period from the 1910s to the 1970s, when many Black people left the South for better opportunities in other parts of the country, many people in Mississippi left for Chicago, with Chicago being the northern center for blues. So it makes sense that the Smokestack Twins would have gone straight to Chicago. When they arrive at a hidden road, the twins unveil a truckload of liquor, smuggled Irish beer, and Italian wine from Chicago gangs. When Sammy reaches to move a palm frond from the truck, he finds a snake underneath. The twins move in fluid unison to kill the snake, stabbing it in its head and tossing it aside as it still hisses and rattles and bubbles out with blood. It's like so gnarly. The snake is a very common icon in Christianity for evil or temptation. The narrative is focused heavily on the idea of tempting. Will an innocent, like Sammy, fall as far as his cousins, who he so clearly admires, or will he be able to resist it? Or will he choose a secret third path, something else, something for himself? Smoke tells Sammy to go with Stack because he needs someone to watch his back. Stack doesn't know how to watch his own back. Remember that. The brothers embrace and go their own separate ways. Smoke visits his friend Bo Chow at his grocery store, revealing his plan to open a juke joint with gambling, much to Bo's delight. Smoke asks for a painted sign, and Bo tells his daughter Lisa to go fetch her mother. Lisa crosses the street to their other store, where her mother, Grace Chow, is working. This scene is amazing. It's all one shot, where you're following behind. It's a tracking shot behind Lisa, where you get to see the segregation in this community. There is a black side of the street and there is a white side of the street. This is Jim Crow segregation racism. This is how things worked at the time. But the role of the Chinese was an intermediary. The Chinese could be on either side of the street. This reveals the place societally of the Chows and largely of the Delta Chinese who did exist during that time. Chinese laborers arrived during Reconstruction, and much like they arrived during the building of the railroads, but by the late 1800s, 1870s through the 1890s, a lot of the Chinese had moved off the plantations as laborers, and they had started to open up their own businesses like grocery stores and laundromats, cleaners, things like that. Segregation prohibited black people from shopping in white stores. The Chinese operated as intermediaries, and segregation also prohibited black people from opening up their own stores. And racism prevented black people's stores. When black people would open up their own stores, if the stores were doing too well, white people would burn those stores to the ground. Then the Chinese would open up the stores, and those stores would be able to sell to everybody, right? Because they're not black, not white. Racism is the dumbest, stupidest concept ever in the entire world. At the time, there were only two legal races. There was white and there was colored. If you weren't white, you were in the section of colored. Yes, and yes, that includes Italians. Yes, that includes Native Americans and Chinese and black people and the Irish. Yes, they were all considered colored at this time period. There was an infamous challenge to this called the Lum v. Rice case, where the Lum family of Rosedale, Mississippi fought to have their children attend an all-white school instead of the substandard colored school. Catherine Lum later stated, "I did not want my children to attend the colored school because the community would have classified us as Negroes." There was this fear that being labeled would just mix you together with black people. And if you were black or Negro, you were treated like shit. You were a second-class citizen. And nobody wanted that. There was a fight with the Chinese to either be considered white, which we're not gonna do a full H-Mart drama on that one, which some of them thought they were, and some of them still think they are.
Who am I saying that? Who said that?
Because the racial stratification is so bizarre, and because race is a social construct, this idea of who goes where doesn't make any sense. But in 1927, the Mississippi Supreme Court ruled against them, stating that colored schools were sufficient. Hey, if they're good for Negroes, they're good for you. And the fight for Asians to avoid being categorized as black caused years and years of friction. And it's still going on between the black community and the Asian community. It's caused a lot of conversation, distrust, sometimes violence. If you need to brush up on it, look up what's going on with affirmative action right now. I don't have the time to get into it, but like, we're still experiencing the fallout. And who wins? Who wins out of all of that? White supremacy. The Delta Chinese population has rapidly declined in that area. 1990 census, which was the latest that I could find, found only about 1,000 people who identify still as Delta Chinese in that community. Grace Chow is a shrewd bargainer. She haggles with Smoke over the price of signs and menus. She only relents when Bo volunteers that they have only one color in stock. The film's title, Sinners, becomes clearer here. We're starting to understand why this movie is named Sinners. All major characters harbor some sin. Smoke and Stack are gangsters, violent gangsters. Grace loves money, clearly. She has a very shrewd heart when it comes to money. And Bo is weak for gambling, even though clearly he's not a good liar. As more characters are introduced, the title resonates more and more deeply. We're getting alcoholics and adulterers. You'll see. While driving, Stack tells Sammy that the guitar that he has is Charlie Patton's guitar, that he won it off him in a card game. Charlie Patton is considered the father of Delta blues, having taught many early legends in the genre. Charlie Patton's legacy, his ancestry, is hotly contested. His features were described as being Caucasian, but he is said to be mixed with white, black, and Choctaw. There's really no way of knowing for sure. He blended deep blues, hillbilly music, 19th century ballads, and black and white country music together into a very unique sound that went on to become what is known as the blues. He was one of the very few blues players in his time to hold concerts and to perform in major cities like Chicago and New York. At a railway station, Stack and Sammy meet Delta Slim, a blues player and alcoholic. Stack lures him to the juke joint with a taste of smuggled Irish beer. Since the film is set in the Prohibition era, liquor is illegal. The best Slim usually gets is the harsh chemical taste of moonshine, which if you haven't ever tasted moonshine before, sometimes you can get corn liquor and it tastes fine, and then sometimes you get moonshine and it tastes like drinking rubbing alcohol. Either way, if somebody hands you a mason jar full of liquor, I wouldn't take it. That's me personally though, I wouldn't take it. But, live your life. I don't judge, hey, YOLO. Are the kids still saying that? I don't know. When Sammy turns around, he tells Stack that a white woman is staring at him. This is already odd because she is in the colored section of the rail line, which she's not supposed to be. Also, a white woman openly talking to a black man would be considered highly dangerous for both of them. If they were suspected of having any sort of inappropriate conversation or relationship, Mary would be in a lot of danger, and Stack would also potentially be in a lot of danger as well, which is why Stack is so desperately trying to get her away from him. Mary is white passing though, and also Stack's ex-girlfriend. The history between them is deep and very painful. We'll go into the cultural history of passing a little bit later on. While Stack, Slim, and Sammy are driving to the juke joint, they pass a chain gang. One of the other brutal things that happened out of the rotting corpse of slavery was not only sharecropping, but also the prison system. For generations, okay, you've been getting free labor out of a group of people, and now you're not. You're not getting free labor out of them. Okay. How are you going to be able to get labor out of these people again? Because you got to get free labor out of them again, because you're like a piece of shit. So you got to get free labor out of them. You can't just start paying them. Ew. So we have the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, right? Right? Except in the punishment of a crime, which means that slavery is still legal in this country. Yes, slavery still exists in America. As you are sitting here, as you are watching this, it is still legal as long as that person has committed a crime, no matter what that crime may be. You are allowed to hold them and force them into labor and not pay them. That's on the books, and we're just supposed to be normal about it. I love this country. I love it here. In Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness, published in 2011, at the time of that publishing, there were more black men in prisons than there were enslaved in 1850. Slavery exists. When people say to you, like, get over it, slavery was a long time ago, no. Slavery exists today. I'm not over it because it's going on right now, friend. You want me to get over something that's going on concurrently, and I need you to understand that. I'm not over it, brother. I can't be over it. There are more black men incarcerated enslaved today than there were in pre-Civil War slavery. No, I'm not over it, fam. I'm not over it. I'm seething.
To this day. To this day. To this day.
Delta Slim tells the story of his friend Rice. They were arrested for charges of vagrancy. Vagrancy, another bullshit thing that was created in the Jim Crow post-Civil War Reconstruction era. These laws were also specifically created to target newly emancipated slaves. Imagine, okay, you're a newly freed slave, okay? Where do you live? You don't live on the plantation anymore because you're not a slave anymore. Where's your home? You're gonna put a down payment for a home? No. With what money? You don't have money. So where's your home? So now they've invented a law that says it's illegal to be homeless. But you were just a slave.
Huh?
So homelessness is now a crime, which is what vagrancy laws are, is the punishment of homelessness. And what they would do is they would round up black people for vagrancy and just put them right back into the prison system, right back into a system of slavery. It was just a way of rounding up newly freed people and putting them right back into the system in which they had just escaped from. And a lot of these vagrancy laws still exist today. A lot of vagrancy laws are still used as a way of punishing homelessness. We have a lot of homelessness in this country. A lot of it stems from a lot of these slave laws that we still have. It's like loitering laws. A lot of those things extend from these slavery laws. While incarcerated, Rice and Slim start to play for their white captors, and they impress them so much that the police take them and put them on a road show at the homes of white people, as if they like own them or whatever. Rice and Slim earn their freedom and, some money also along with it. Rice wants to leave the area and start a church. He takes his cash and buys a train ticket, but he makes a mistake. He takes out his wad of cash and a white man sees it. He accuses Rice of a sexual crime. And that's how easy it was. All you needed to do was accuse a black man of a crime. You did not need proof, you did not need evidence, you did not need a trial. You just needed the word of a white man. Lynchings were very common in the South during Reconstruction, and between 1882 and 1968, reportedly, this is not the full actual number, but the reported number of lynchings were 3,500. This number, 3,500, that includes men, women, and children, yes. And sexual mutilation was definitely an aspect of lynchings, yes, even for the women, even for the children. During this, Smoke visits another part of the Delta. He lays a bundle of flowers at a small monument with a tiny handprint on a stone and a bottle of milk beside it, clearly the grave of a child. He's approached by Annie, Smoke's estranged wife, and the mother of their deceased child. Annie is a hoodoo practitioner. Now, hoodoo is a unique system. It's a set of practices, beliefs, traditions, and observances that is a combination of African religions, Catholicism, Protestantism, and indigenous spiritualities formed by enslaved Africans. Over time, Western media, through just fucking sheer laziness, racism, and carelessness, combined the idea of hoodoo and voodoo together into one thing, blurring the identities of both. Hoodoo and voodoo are not the same thing, not at all, but they rhyme, so who cares. Voodoo is a religion primarily from the regions of Benin, Togo, Ghana, and Nigeria. You can also see it in places in the Caribbean. You can see it in places like Haiti and things like that. While hoodoo is more of an American, more based out of the Americas, based from formerly enslaved Africans, and it's a closed practice. The purpose of hoodoo is to use the natural world, which is plants, herbs, roots, and the spiritual world, prayer, petition, spirits, to enact change. because enslaved people were so disempowered. I mean, you're talking about people that did not have access to medical care. What hospitals were they going to go to? You get sick with something, you're bit with a snake, you've come down with some sort of mystery illness. What are you going to do? You're unable to advocate for yourself in a court of law. You're unable to stand up for yourself if a white person decides to harass you. So why not go to a root worker? Why not go to a hoodoo priestess and petition the spirits to help you out? Why not get a tincture, an elixir, a bundle of roots, a prayer, a petition? It reduces the intense feeling of hopelessness and connects you to something larger. You can ask the ancestors, look out for me, protect me. It connects you to something divine instead of being here on earth just brutalized by systems that are out of your control. Annie feeds Smoke's mojo bag. A mojo bag is a small bag that's used for protection or good luck, and it's filled with herbs, roots, crystals, and it's a talisman basically for the person who wears it. The mojo bag has to be fed every once in a while to sort of like charge it. You know, you have to pray over it, or you can offer it things like liquor or incense. A mojo bag, it should only be touched by the person who makes it and the person it's intended for. Despite the fact that Smoke says he doesn't believe in magic, he still keeps it with him, whether because he does believe in it or because he wants to hold on to something so meaningful from Annie, a token of how much Annie wants to keep him safe and loves him. Cut to a man falling hard to the ground. He seems to be smoking. His skin is charred and bleeding. Bert is a member of the clan, so is Joan, and the nephew of Hogwood, the man who sold the mill to the Smokestack twins. The injured man is known as Remick. He offers them gold in exchange for shelter from the Choctaws hunting him. Bert and Joan never question why the Choctaw are after him or who the victim is. They side immediately with the white man, a blind trust that will be their downfall. The Choctaw vampire hunters arrive with that shit on, yes, dripped out, yes, icy, and they try to persuade Joan not to let Remick into the house, but Joan stands fast. She has racial loyalty. Of course, that only really extends to a fellow white man. The Choctaw know that once the sun goes down, they will be at a disadvantage, so they get the fuck out of there. Over the house, we see turkey vultures circling. Vultures eat dead flesh or carrion, and vultures are seen as omens of death. The presence of a vulture implies that soon death will be here. Remick is a vampire. The reason he's burning is because, vampires can't be out in the sun and whatnot. On one side of the room, we see a cradle. And this cradle has always bothered me. I've always wanted to know what was the deal with this cradle. And according to Peter Derrimanis, the guy who plays Bert, there was a scene that was shot and later cut out that explained that Joan and Bert were trying to have a child, but they were unable to conceive. Now this mirrors Annie and Smoke, the scene that was just before this. There's two couples that desire for a child. One had a child and lost them. Another couple wants to have a child and can't conceive. And they could be seen as like foils, mirror foils to each other. And you could watch this as like, what will two do in their desperation to get what they want? How will these two groups of people respond in reaction to a temptation to get what they want, which is an inner need for love, or to fulfill a void inside of them that has been left open by their desire to have a child. But it was cut out, unfortunately. I did notice that crib, and it did bother me for a very long time. Also, one of the things that I did notice is that Remick has a ring on his finger. I think it's his ring finger. And so when he says like, they killed my wife, was he not lying? Was he married? The juke is up and running, and the patrons start to arrive, including Pearline, a woman that Sammy met earlier at the train station. Pearline is such a beautiful name. She is older and married, but she's alone when she comes to the juke. And, you know, guys, there could be so many reasons why she's alone without her husband. Y'all keep coming for my girl Perline, okay? First of all, she could be in a lavender marriage, okay? Her husband could be down at the docks, okay, with incoming sailors, all right, doing what he wants to do, okay? And they have an understanding, okay? They could be poly. They could have an open relationship. Y'all think this is new? None of this is new. Mary also comes and Sammy confronts her about her race. Mary responds that she's just a human being, but that her great-granddaddy was black, which would make her 1/8 black.
1/8 black.
Afternoon, my octoroon. Come on, bring it in there.
During the Jim Crow era, the one-drop rule applied, meaning that if they can trace a single lineage of black ancestry, you were considered black. It didn't matter if you were blonde with blue eyes and pale skin. It didn't matter if you were 1/8 black, 1/16 black, 1/64 black. You were black. It didn't matter. Didn't matter how far back it went. You were still considered black. Didn't matter if you were surrounded by all white family members. You were black. It was a caste system. It was a way of maintaining white supremacy in order to prevent interracial marriage. Many would hide their blackness as a way to escape the caste system in what was called and what was referred to as passing. If your features were white enough and white people looked at you and treated you as a white person, you could pass as a white person and live amongst them. Today, there's plenty of people that pass as white people. You don't have to be like, it doesn't have to be as far back as like 1/16 or 1/8 black. There are people who pass as white people who are like 50% black, who are like half black. Like, have you seen Drake's baby? Like that. That is a Caucasian child. That is a white child, okay? Also, if you really want to get into it, there's this fantastic movie. There's two of them called Imitation of Life. There's an older version of it. I would suggest watching the newer version. I think it came out in the 60s. The older version is not as good. The newer version, the 60s version that came out later, is great. It's fantastic. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. And it's all about this woman who wants to pass. She's a black mother and she wants to pass. Great movie. Highly recommend. My mom used to make me watch it all the time as a kid for Mother's Day. But that's another conversation. This idea of like passing as white was a protection measure. It was a way of surviving in a brutal, unjust, unfair, made up, imaginary caste system. It was something that people would do in order to stay alive in a system and to flourish in a system that was hooey, made up. It was hogwash, okay? None of this stuff makes any sense. Race is a social construct. All of these different things that we're doing in order to keep people in these different categories and all these different slots, none of it makes any sense, okay? It's stupid, it's dumb, and I hate it, okay? And the idea of passing even today, even today we have these conversations of like, who can pass? Oh, this person's trying to pass. Girl, shut up. Mary passes as white, and Stack arranges to have her marry a rich white man and live in another state as a white woman. This was for her safety and what he thought would be her happiness, but Mary didn't want that. Mary wanted to live as herself, as a human being, with Stack. A man attempts to buy a drink at the bar, but is short on cash. He just has a wooden nickel for Maybell's general store. As stated before, many landowners wouldn't pay the sharecroppers in cash, but in tokens or scrip that could be exchanged for goods. Smoke doesn't want to honor this, but Annie and Stack convince him that if he wants this business to be successful, he has to make our people feel welcome. It's not about the money, but about the community. The truth is, because of how little money the people in this area make, there is no way that the juke is going to be able to stay open for very long. This goes back to the idea of intergenerational wealth. Because of the fact that for generations, Black people were prohibited from being able to amass wealth, we were not able to gain generational wealth. So that wealth that white people were able to gain generations was able to compound on itself over time and become worth more and more and more. And because of the fact that generation after generation after generation, we have been systemically cheated out of generational wealth by being paid in wooden nickels, we have not been able to amass generational wealth to today, where we still are way behind the 8 ball when it comes to how much money we have as far as our wealth and our value. And some motherfuckers would say it's because we don't try hard enough. And to those people I say, come here, come within striking distance, come here. Sammy is encouraged to play, and he is called on stage, and he introduces himself as Preacher Boy. The nickname he uses as the son of a preacher man. Sorry, that was terrible. He sings, and through his voice, we are reminded of the opening of the movie, that some people have the ability to link the past, the present, and the future through their voice, and Sammy is one of them. Have y'all ever heard of Frisian before? I just found out about this, and I experience it all the time. Like, you listen to music and it's just like transcending, you know? Oh God, there's so much, like, you know, I live in an area, the Pacific Northwest, and sometimes I go to concerts and everybody's just standing there at the concert, like nobody's moving, and it's just like, what is wrong with y'all? Get up, move your butts. Like, what is going on? Like, nobody moves, nobody dances anymore. It's so freaky. The blues is an entirely American musical form. The blues is where we get rock, jazz, R&B, soul, funk, hip hop, and then from there, all the other musical genres that are influenced by those central genres. The blues, hear me when I say this, is the most influential and important musical form in the history of the world. Yes, beloved, yes. Yes, but you would know that because black people invented it, and so who cares? Sammy summons the spirits of past ancestors as well as future ancestors, those performing dances like the Zauli dancers in the Ivory Coast, to ballet dancers, to sea walkers, to twerkers, even Peking opera. Like, Sammy is a conduit. He's a griot. Like, he is a vessel through which music and sound is transformed and transfixed to be able to be moved, an amplifier that, like, sound and music and spirit and all of that can come through and come form. And like, we have these people today. I'm not gonna say it, but Beyonce is one of them. It's true. He metaphorically burns the house down. You know, the roof is on fire. This draws Remick and his 2 new recruits, Bert and Joan. Overhead, we see what? Turkey vultures. Remick, Joan, and Bert play a rendition of Pick Poor Robin Clean by Getchy Wiley and Elvie Thomas, a song whose lyrics have been widely debated for like a century now. Now, is this song about robbery or is this song about cannibalism? It kind of depends on your point of view, but the context of the movie, the lyrics evoke one thing of consumption and of a new family being formed. The song being turned into this sort of upbeat, saccharine, corny version sounds like when white people cover rap songs and they do it on the banjo. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes, like, on YouTube they'll be like, it'll be like WAP on the banjo, and I don't like that, and I don't know if I'm being too woke about it, because I don't know if I'm being like the friend that's too woke, but like, are you making fun of us? Like, it feels like you're making fun of us. I don't know if you're making fun of us or not. Like, what's the joke? Are we the joke, or is the banjo the joke? Are you the joke? What's the joke here? I don't know if I'm being too woke. Let me know in the comments. White people, let me know in the comments. White people down in the comments, let me know. They don't allow Remix Clan into the juke, partly because they're fucking weird, okay? But mostly because of the potential for harm. Black-only spaces offer respite from the surveillance of white supremacy, a chance to escape the internalized policing described by philosopher Frantz Fanon. Frantz Fanon talks about the ways in which Black people feel so much pressure from white supremacy, and to be safe from it, we internalize and adapt the behavior even when white people aren't around. We live with the constant presence of what he talks about, a little white man in our heads, policing us, watching us at all times, telling us how to talk, how to walk, how to dress, policing us, policing our behavior at every single walk. This juke was a chance to escape that, to be free from that for just one night. Mary, finding out that the juke will not hit even, offers to get the money off of Remick's group using her whiteness as a weapon, which, you know, is like how it should be. Once outside, she finds them not far away from the juke singing Will You Go Lassie Go, a Scotch-Irish song, giving a hint to Remick's true origins. Remick offers the same gold that he offered Joan and Bert, because he's broke. The same 3 coins? That's all you have? It's giving broke. She almost takes it until she notices that he is drooling, which is gross. She pulls out a gun from her garter belt and leaves to go back in the juke, unnerved by them. Here's the thing though, Mary was trained to fight by Stack. Remember when she said that earlier? She was like, you train me how to fight. But we already know that Stack doesn't know how to watch his own back. Remember that? I told you to remember that. Okay, thus Mary turns her back on Remick as he attacks her. Yes. Dumb, stupid. Mary comes back. She has to be let in, and her behavior is much more forward and sexual. She immediately seduces Stack, which is kind of funny because if you think about it, they have a hive mind, which means like Remick's in there, you know what I mean? So like Remick is like, yeah, do that shit with your tongue, you know? He loves that shit. Yeah, do that shit with your hips, girl. Oh shit, that's gonna drive him crazy. Like he's in there, you know what I mean? It's like you consent, but does he consent? It's crazy to me, and I think it's so funny. Annie begs Smoke to put Stack's body outside, understanding that something supernatural is happening. She believes that they're being besieged by haints. Now, haints are mostly in southern places. I don't really know if people from the north have heard of them. I've lived in the south, so I've heard of them before. The northern folks, Yankees, if y'all have heard of haints, let me know in the comments. Haints are malevolent spirits. They are ghosts, but they're like ghosts in like the James Wan universe. Ghosts are in Black culture. We have like ghosts and we have spirits and things like that, but like they're cool, you know, like the ghost of my Nana is cool because my grandmother was cool in life. Therefore, she's cool in death. You know what I mean? Like the ghosts that I've encountered, the ghosts of like my aunties and my uncles, my grandpappy, they're cool because they were cool in life. But like the ghosts that y'all are seeing in these movies, they are not cool. Those are not cool ghosts. Those are haints. The ghosts that y'all are seeing in these Insidious movies, those are haints. Okay. The ghost of my Nana, she don't mess with those ghosts. Okay. So do you see the difference between like a ghost and a haint? The tiptoe through the tulips people, that's a haint. You can protect yourself from haints by using a color called haint blue. And I believe that you can find haint blue at like the paint store. I'm pretty sure that you can find, if you go to Lowe's, you can find haint blue somewhere in the paint section. It resembles the sky or water. I was told that haints cannot resist the blue sky, and so when they see the blue sky, they fly up into it. That's what I was taught. Okay, but the Google machine tells me that haints cannot cross water. I don't know. It sounds true. I like both of those reasons. I'm gonna choose to believe what I was told and also what the Google machine told me, okay? Usually you paint blue up on the ceiling of porches and things like that. Also, I was told that they painted paint blue up on the ceiling of porches because it makes you feel cooler, which I believe. It's icy blue kind of color, and it's just like, doesn't that make you feel cooler? As you're sweating your goddamn fucking balls off in the fucking 90-degree heat in Mississippi? Kinda, I guess. It's in the mind. Stack breaks through the door and almost attacks Smoke until Annie throws a bowl of pickled garlic on him, burning him. She then learns that these are not Haints that we're dealing with. These are vampires. Vampires in this universe are beings who are separated from the ancestors. They're a different sort of expanded universe from the typical vampires that we see. They are unable to commune with those who came before them. In hoodoo, ancestor veneration is essential. Asking of your ancestors to do work for you on the other side is part of your power. Staying connected to your family, to who you are, to your identity, is a way of maintaining yourself and your strength. And we know some people who have lost their power and who have lost their connection to the ancestors. And I won't say names, but I'm sure you can think of the three. As vampires, you cannot connect to the ancestors. Remick has been disconnected from his people. Despite having this new clan, his real desire is to be reunited with his own community. Remick is Irish and traded his cultural connection for vampirism. The Irish who came to America in the 20th century traded their own cultural heritage for another power, the power of whiteness. The Irish faced brutal colonization from the British, leading up to a time called the Great Famine. During this time, many Irish moved to America, where they were still considered inferior, something less than white, but a little more than colored. I mean, they were colored, but they were little more than colored. Like, little more than colored. But somewhere between World War I and World War II, so right around the time of this movie, the Irish went from being considered non-white to white. The Irish chose to adopt white supremacist ideas in order to compete with black people for jobs. This is also Great Depression time. Times were rough, and instead of having some sort of class solidarity to side with racists, instead of relying on the shared history of colonization, forced labor, Irish chose societal power and oppression. Now, today, you have whole generations of Irish Americans who have no connection to their Irish roots. They have no knowledge of language, history, music, culture, food. They have no idea where they came from. They have no idea of their ancestors. They have no clue, and they spend tons of money going back to Ireland. Remick wants to turn Sammy so that he can gain his power to summon the ancestors, so that he can rebuild that bridge back to his own people. Remick's clan demands Sammy, and Bert reveals that the juke joint was a trap. His uncle, the Grand Wizard, planned to kill everyone inside the next day. Bert calls it a killing floor, a goddamn slaughterhouse. This is a reference to one of the most famous blues songs by Howlin' Wolf. The killing floor is a metaphor for a difficult situation that you can't get out of. The part of the slaughterhouse that the animals were sent to be killed. When Stack asked what was on the floors earlier, he was seeing the remnants of past killings. Remick performs a rendition of Rocky Road to Dublin, a song about a man who leaves his home and goes to Liverpool, England. He performs an Irish step dance, while the rest of the black vampires form a ring shout around him. This is a combination of cultures, a blur of identities. Remick almost looks euphoric, as though he's tasted a bit of what he desires most: community, belonging. The vampires taunt the survivors with an eerie rendition of Pick Poor Robin Clean, driving Grace to desperation. As a mother, she thinks of her daughter and also of the town's safety. In a frantic choice, she invites them in. Don't go too hard on Grace, okay, y'all? She's a mother.
I'ma see what my kids, bitch, I'm a mother!
No drama!
Okay. A mother. Grace immolates herself with Beau. Annie is attacked. Smoke has to put a stake in her heart, as he promised her earlier. The idea of her being separated from the ancestors is worse than death for her. Mary and Stack are shocked by the death of Annie, as this changes their plans and they retreat. Smoke and Stack fight. Stack upset that Smoke killed Annie, when they wanted to live together as a family, where none of them could die. Then Stack tries to bite Smoke, but he's unable to get through the power of the mojo bag that Annie made for him. Outside, Sammy runs from Remick and is pursued by the remaining vampires, reciting the Lord's Prayer and mocking him. Remick recites the words back to him, telling him that the men who stole his father's land tried to force Christianity on him as well. If this is true, and Remick was around during the time of Christianity's arrival in Ireland, that would make him like 1,500 years old, like well over 1,000 years old. Which, if that's true, girl, what's the skincare regime? Calling out to God does absolutely nothing for Sammy. He's alone in the wilderness. Remick is hit over the head with Sammy's guitar, and the metal plate of the resonator slices through his head. Now, resonators use brass or steel, sometimes nickel, but not silver, so it's not enough to exactly kill him. When all seems lost, Smoke appears and stakes Remick through the heart, just as the sun rises, turning Remick into a fire tornado, or, as we used to call them, fire devils, a whirlwind of flame that is ultimately sucked up and turned into nothing. Sammy, still holding the neck of his guitar, parts with Smoke, who gives him the car. He asks him about why he's still holding on to that guitar, and Sammy tells him Stack said it was Charlie Patton's guitar. Smoke tells him that it was a lie. It was their dad's guitar. Sammy's uncle, who was a violent man with a bad reputation, was also a blues player, and everyone had hid this from him. His family saw the road that Sammy was going down, and that's why they were so desperate for him to choose a different path. Smoke, unable to roll his own cigarettes without Stack, tears off his mojo bag. In his final moments, he sees Annie and their baby waiting for him on the other side. Hogwood interrupts him and is shredded with gunfire. In one of the most cathartic moments on film, finally, Smoke is reunited with his family in the ancestral plane. Sammy emerges from the car, as we saw. Look at that circular writing. Woo! That circular plot. Woo! Sammy emerges from the car, visibly harmed and disheveled, as he stumbles into a small white church. The church belongs to his father, Jedediah Moore, who opposes Sammy's blues playing and pleads with him to drop his guitar, renounce that life, and join the church. Mid-credit scene. We cut to October 1992. This is the same day that Candyman was released in theaters. Did you know that? An elderly Sammy is reunited with Stack and Annie, who now live as vampires. They have not aged a day. Before they part, Sammy confesses that although he's still haunted by the events of that night, it was the greatest day of his life. Stack agrees, as it was the last time that he saw the sun, his brother, and the only time when his community experienced true freedom. Now, there are many themes in this film. We've already talked about the themes of temptation, but also the connection to your cultural and ancestral roots, how lost you become as a person once that connection is severed. Black community ties are very strong despite the horrors of slavery, institutionalization of tearing families apart, and people having to move constantly to maintain any semblance of work, income, things like that. But it's still more than normal to form family connections with somebody who's not blood related to you. I have plenty of people who are my aunties who are not related to me. The knowledge of Black history and culture and how we got here, how we're connected, is our strength. It's our pride. And it's something that we cannot lose. Oftentimes you see people who get into Black culture, hip hop, rap music, and though they have no cultural connection to it, will quickly abandon it for something else. For country music, for example. That seems to be a really big thing. And as soon as they feel some other sort of cultural connection to country music, they will just drop rap, R&B for that, because they did not have any kind of connection to our music whatsoever. It didn't mean anything to them. It was not there was no sort of ancestral connection, no sort of cultural connection to them. Because of the fact that they did not have a history with it, it was empty for them. It was just a way of making money. And because of the fact that that was easy money, or because of the fact that it was, Remick is severed from that ancestral tie and seeks to take it from somebody else. This mirrors the cultural theft that occurs in many places, like the music industry in America. Unable to make connections to their own history, their own past, why not just copy it? Why not just copy it from somebody else? The irony is that white supremacy worked for centuries to suppress blackness as an inferior group, as an inferior culture. And in that time, it lost its own individual identities to assimilation. And in our own inability to assimilate, we retained our culture. And thus, we retained our originality, which is now highly coveted and highly copied. Amazing. Sensational. Religion is also one of the major themes in this movie as well. Religion is not seen as a savior to Sammy. His father's religion is just as repressive as the offer of Remick to assimilate into the hive mind. Both want Sammy to change who he is to fit their ideals, but neither want to accept him as he is. Christianity was forced on both the Irish and the Africans, robbing us of our ancestral practices that were tied to our land, our history, and our heritage. Christianity was then used as a tool of suppression to keep us in order, a blunt weapon. Hoodoo is juxtaposed to that. It's seen as a more natural and spiritual practice, less tied to colonialism, violence, and white supremacy. Connection to heritage is a source of strength. Severing it leads to loss. At the final end of this movie, we see Sammy singing This Little Light of Mine. I've always thought of this scene as being also one of the major themes of the movie. He has a light and he needs to let that shine. He has something to share, a divine gift with the world that he needs to let shine. There are many people in this world who have lights that they need to shine to the world. They don't need to hide it. There are plenty of people in this world who have amazing gifts, talents, and you have to let those things shine. My grandmother, God bless her, God rest her soul, she used to say to me that when you shine your light, it offers brightness to other people, and they need that. They need a light so that they have a light in their life, but also it'll attract moths who will try to eat you alive, and you just have to be prepared for that. The moths and the people who need your warmth. My takeaway from this is that I'm so glad that Ryan Coogler decided to share his light with the world. We need it so badly, and I'm so glad that you watched this video. I really hope that you liked it. If you watched the whole entire thing, this video took me so long to make. Obviously, you can tell it's probably the longest video on my channel. I really hope that you liked it and really got some things out of it. I did a lot of research on this, not to make you feel bad if you didn't like it. Actually, you know what? If you didn't like it, feel bad about that. I did a lot of hard work on this one. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video. If I don't, take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. Forgive others. Do something kind for another person. Because remember, the monsters, they're always closer than you think. Okay. Bye. Bye. See you later. Bye. Bye.